Well, good afternoon. What time is it? Just after 5 o'clock, and we're back with another Relate Well Live with Dr. Rick Marks. I hope you had a great day. Excuse me. I hope if you, I can't even talk. You notice that? I hope you have had a great day. It's been a relaxing day and a productive day, and that you've been able to achieve some of the goals that you have wanted to. All right, you ready to get right into it? Let's do it. What exactly is love? Many years ago when Luella finally agreed to date me, we went on our first date. And it really wasn't a date. I have to admit, she finally agreed to go out with me one Sunday night after church when she actually turned me down that morning and said she didn't want to. And then church that night, she said, "Hey, if that offer's still open, I'll go out. I'll go with you." I was a young, poor sailor and E4 at the time. Actually, I was an E5, a second-class petty officer. And so we went to McDonald's. And there we are sitting in the back of the store, the restaurant there, drinking our sodas and just talking. We've been friends for 2.5 years, but she didn't want to date me. Made that clear over 2.5 years. And on this particular night, we end up with this conversation about our relationship. And unconsciously, we never said the word, but unconsciously, we were actually, talking about marriage. So I took her home. Now, if you follow me on any level, you know that I grew up in a broken home where there was abuse and craziness. And if you ask me today, did my dad love me? I would tell you yes. If you ask me how I know, I don't really, because I never felt it. I never felt love. I know he did because based on what I've learned about my father and his own journey and abuse from his dad and craziness of his family, he loved me the best way he knew how, though us kids never really felt it. We never felt it from our stepmother. And so, I went into my adult life never knowing if I was loved or lovable. So after we get done at McDonald's, Will and I there back in, it was like June of 1983, I took her home. And I remember driving home, and all of a sudden I just started crying. And my background as a psychologist and a minister as well. And I just remember driving back to the base just with tears. And I said it kind of out to God. I said to God, I don't know what love is. It was the first time realization that I don't know what love is. But I said to him, if what I feel for her is love, then I love her. And, I don't know that she really knew what it was either. We both loved each other, but we really didn't know what that looked like or how to do it well. Because when you grow up in dysfunction, you only can do what you know. You don't know what you don't know. And we didn't know how to love well. I didn't know how to relate well. Because I didn't know how to relate well, I couldn't love well, because to love well, you got to learn to relate well. And so that began a quest for me on the idea of love. The word love, you think about it in our culture today, is really grossly misused. For example, I love my wife. It's Luella, by the way. We did marry February 1984, been together 37 years. And they have been a marvelous 37 years. I would do them again. Certain things I would not do again, but I'll be honest, the challenges in our marriage and within ourselves that we went through over the years have made me the man I am today. So I'm glad that I was teachable and was able to learn and grow and be respectful along the way, which really was what Relate Well is about. If you want to fight free marriage, let's think about it. If you want to fight free marriage, you're going to have to learn to love well. To have a fight free marriage, you got to learn to love well. To have a fight free marriage, you got to learn to relate well so you can love well. It's the skills and the tools to love well. So let's think about this for just a minute. This word love, it's grossly misused in culture. For example, I love my wife. I love my children. I love the U.S. military. I'm a 12-year Navy veteran. And I love mint chocolate chip ice cream. Doesn't it show right here? I love mint chocolate chip ice cream. Now you're sitting there going, wait a minute, Rick. You love Luella and mint chocolate chip ice cream? Yes. You hear the misuse of the word love, don't you? What would happen if I changed the word love to this word? What difference would it make in how you treated people, particularly those that you say you love? For those in the faith community who are watching, you can think of, familiar passages like for God so loved the world, love your neighbor, love one another. Let's change the word love to this word. For God so valued the world. Value your neighbor. Value one another. Value your enemy. You see, I do value my wife, and I do value my children. I do not value the U.S. military ever near as much. And I don't value mint chocolate chip ice cream at all. I just love it. You get the idea that the word love and value can be used interchangeably. So think about it this way. If I treated my wife on a regular basis in a way that devalued her, if I treated you on a regular basis in a way that devalues you, could you not then argue that I don't love you? The answer is an obvious, of course you could. Of course. Here's why. Love never devalues the object of love. And if you treat someone on a regular basis in a way that devalues them, then they could argue that you don't love them. There have been times in my marriage that I have treated her well in a way that devalued her. I regret those dearly. I regret them. Fortunately, I think, and she could tell you, I think I've tried to love and value her more than I devalued her. So I think I've been more consistent in valuing than in devaluing. Now, remember, I already said earlier that early on, I was not a guy that knew how to love well. I never saw it. I knew I loved the well because based on what I was feeling, but I didn't know how to love well because I didn't know how to relate well. If you want to fight free marriage, you've got to be able to do that, all right? So love, I think, has some core values to it, all right? So here we are today. We're talking about what exactly is love, all right? We know that, I don't love mint chocolate chip ice cream. I love my wife. I love my kids. I don't value mint chocolate chip ice cream. It's not a value. I do enjoy it. That's the misuse of the word love. But think about some values of the word love. And I got a few ideas for you. Value number one, love will always be open and vulnerable and honest. One of the values that I think, if you're going to love someone, you're going to have to be open to them. You're going to have to be vulnerable to them. You're going to have to be honest with them. We tend to misuse the word, I want to be honest with you. All right. We tend to misuse that statement because if you say to someone, I want to be honest with you, and I think honesty is a value of love for sure, but I think we tend to misuse that word. When we say, I want to be honest with you, that would suggest that you would lie to me. What you really want to use is the word, I want to be open with you. I want to be vulnerable. I want to be emotionally open to you. Emotional openness is required for humans to bond to other humans, you see. But when you're fighting with someone, you emotionally shut down and close. And so you want to be open and honest. Openness and honesty is a value of love. The second value I think that love has to it is that it's caring and compassionate. That love is caring and love is compassionate. Compassion means to suffer with. It's a little different than empathy. Empathy basically says, I feel what you feel. I can identify and I care. But empathy would not drive involvement. The difference between empathy and compassion, empathy says, I understand, I can get, if you will, how you feel, and that person knows that you get it, but it doesn't mean you would involve yourself. Compassion moves to action. It moves to action. Not do I just care, but I want to do something for you, even if it's just comforting you. or going and getting you a meal. Compassion moves you to action. I think love moves to action. I really do. And the third value of love is there is a commitment to the relationship, to the individual, to the relationship, and it's long-term thinking. You know, one of the sad things today about young couples when they marry, they're not confident that they will actually be married long-term. That's the nature of divorce. All right. I jokingly told, well, many years ago, and I still mean to this day, if you leave me, I'm going to go with you. I am that committed. I grew up in divorce and brokenness. Divorce has never been in my mind. I love her. I am committed. I am dedicated. Have we had problems? Yes. I would argue that I've probably been the greater source of the problem. I think my brokenness and woundedness was a lot deeper than hers. I think she's a lot more mature than I was in a lot of ways. But my insecurities created a lot of conflict and hurt her along the way. My fears came across as control, but I tended to control in passive aggressive ways. And so, but even though I had these issues, I was still committed. I was committed to loving better and changing myself and transforming myself. And I'm just gracious that she was patient with me and kind to me along the way, but that she loved me enough to hang in there with me. You know, I'm hanging in there with her. I'll never forget probably the worst 2 to 3 years of our marriage was 2004 to 2005 and 6, right in there. And there was this one morning, I just felt so many miles away from her, just so many miles away from her. And I wasn't sure that she really loved me. And, you know, I've not been the best of husbands and had a lot of brokenness at the time and a lot of anger and hurt to work through. And some of it was related to her and some was justified and some was not. I'll never forget this morning. This one morning during that time, I was sitting on the bed just feeling empty. And she came and sat next to me and she put her hand on my knee and she said, I want you to know something. And I said, what? She said, I don't like you. I do love you. And we will make it. We're a team. I'm going to tell you something, folks. Those words took me 4 months. Long-term thinking, commitment. That's the third value I think love has. So here's a recap of the values. That value 1, that love is about openness and honesty, vulnerability. Value 2, it's caring and compassionate. And value 3, it's committed. It's long-term thinking. So I could ask, what do you value? What do you value? Are these values of love something that you live out every day in your relationships, in your marriage? Or are your values pain and hurt? Let's be honest. Some people value conflict. Don't know why, but they do. You see, we all have things that we value. What are your values? I think compassion and empathy is a great value embedded in the idea of love, you see. And so we talked about that in a minute. So now let's talk about what love is in some traits of love, all right? Number one, some traits of love. Love is a gift. Love is a gift. You see, love is a gift you give to someone. For those in the faith community, you could probably think about 1 John 4, where it says, we love because he first loved us. He gave. For God so loved that he gave. You see, love is a gift. It's something that you give. Why? Because love is in you. It's something that you have for another. And because you have love for another, you give love, not to get back. Not to get back. You just love, you give love because you love them. And there are no expectations back. You know, as a psychologist and a therapist, sometimes you'll see couples coming in high in conflict, and we'll talk about how they love each other and how they respect each other and how they value each other. And then I'll ask them, would you be willing, out of an act of love, to do behavior X this coming week? Would you be able to give in love and just do these things for your partner? And, you know, let's say, we'll pick on us guys so it's easier and safer. The guy goes, yeah, I can give to do that. I can do that and give that way. Great. And then they come in the next week. You see, they come in the next week and they're all upset. And I said, what are you upset about? Well, you know the thing you want me to do? Well, I gave to her the way you asked me to, and she didn't do anything back. And I would say, well, hang on a minute. You're telling me that you gave behavior X. Yes, I did, but she didn't do anything back. I go, hang on, let me make sure I got this right. You are admitting that you gave this behavior. Yes, but she didn't give anything back. I said, well, wait a minute then. If you're saying you gave this behavior as an act of love to the marriage and to the relationship, you shouldn't expect anything back. If you, quote, give love with an expectation of return, that is not love. Let's be honest, that's an economic exchange. It's called bartering. What she didn't know is you're going to do behavior A with the expectation that she does, behavior Z. No. Love gives unconditionally. It just gives. Why? Because love is in me. And since you're the object of that love, I give to you. Why? It's what I want to do because I love you. The second trait is that love is a choice. Love is a choice that leads to a commitment. Love is a choice, and it leads to a commitment. For those in the faith community, there's a passage in Deuteronomy, verse 30-20, that says, choose to love the Lord your God. You see, I choose to love my wife. I choose to love my children. I choose to love my friends. I choose to love people around me that I meet. You see, because it's a choice that leads to a commitment. Got to say the whole sentence. It's a choice that leads to a commitment. We'll see here in a little bit when we talk about Sternberg's theory of love that if we, one of the components of love is commitment. There's three. And that's a commitment that we're in this together, long-term and short-term. Love is a choice that leads to a commitment. And by the way, just think about it. I may not have feelings of love, and I do believe that love is an emotion, but when I lose the feelings of love, I can still choose to act in a loving way. In my world, I like to say this way, though I may have lost the feelings of love, I can still choose to treat you with goodwill and respect, because love always treats people with goodwill and respect. I can choose to treat you with goodwill and respect and stay committed by an act of choice. Now, let's be honest. We want to get the feelings of love back. Sometimes you'll lose those feelings of love. That's why love is a choice that leads to a commitment. Number 3 trait is love is an action. It's an action, not just an emotion. Now, when we feel love for someone, our tendency at the biological level is to act on those feelings. When you feel love for someone, you act on them. When you feel romance for someone, you tend to act on them. When you feel passion for someone, you tend to act on them. When you feel anger towards someone, you tend to act on that. When you feel fear towards someone, you tend to act on that. When you feel disgust for someone, you tend to act on that. Love is an action because whatever we feel, we act on, unless you learn self-control and just start to treat people with goodwill, even though you may not feel like treating them with goodwill. You see, love is an action, and it's not simply an emotion. There's a passage in 1 John 3, verse 18 says, let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in truth. If you say you love someone, then your behavior will be evident of it. If I say I love my wife, I say I love kids, and yet this is what I said earlier, and you treat them in a way that devalues them, then it calls into question the integrity of the statement that you love them, because love never devalues the object of love. To devalue something, the only reason they would know you devalue them is by what you do, actions, behavior. So love is an action and not simply an emotion. Number 4, and this is one of the ones, folks, that I take to heart, all right? I did love Luella. I remember that time when I drove her home. I told you about that at the very beginning of our time here. And I told you I did not know how to love well. I didn't know how to relate well. I never seen what it meant to love well? Got to know how to relate well. So the fourth trait of love, that love is a skill. Love is also a skill, and you get better at it by practicing it. One of the things that we believe in our work with Relate Well is we teach people the skills for healthy relating, mature love, so that if you live by those skills, and this is the key, those skills become you. You let them become who you are as a way of being, as my mentor always put it, Dr. Lori Gordon. If these skills become you as a way of being, you can have a fight-free marriage. Now, let me say this. Fight-free marriage does not mean you won't have conflict, but you'll handle conflict in healthy, mature adult ways, not in immature ways that leads to fighting. I would say, you have to ask Luella, I would say that we're pretty much fight-free. We do have conflict, we have disagreements, but we don't fight. It's just nice to know that we would rather be us, but I had to learn how to love, the skills for love. I had to learn how to communicate well in a loving way, how to solve problems in a loving way, how to listen in a loving way, how to regulate my emotional brain in a loving way. I think you get the idea. Love is a skill, and you can get better at it. 1 John 4:7, listen to what it says here for those in the faith community. Dear friends, let us practice loving one another. Practice. It's something you can practice and do over and over and become better at it. And last, I want to talk about my camera over here is messed up, so please forgive me on that. I just noticed that my camera had messed up there. So I'm going to back up for just a minute, because I'm actually also trying to record this. We're going to go back to that love is a habit. That love is a habit. It can become second nature. If you learn a skill and then you keep doing the skill over and over and over, guess what? It becomes a habit. That's what we do in Relate Well. We teach people the skills for healthy communication, healthy love, for healthy bonding, healthy attachment, the skills for emotional regulation. And if you take those skills and you're intentional about using them regularly, eventually it becomes a habit. It becomes second nature. I like to think of I use the metaphor of training wheels on a bicycle. When you put the training wheels on the rear wheel there, it's to allow the bike to stand up so your children can learn, right? And as they learn to ride the bike with the training wheels on, every once in a while you'll just make them a little higher. And guess what? At some point, they don't need the training wheels anymore. Why? It's become a habit of riding a bike. They can just get on for the rest of life and ride the bike. I think love is the same way, that you can so mature yourself at the emotional, relational level that being a loving person just becomes a habit for you. And I like to think that on some ways I've become that, not perfectly, but maturely. In Relate Well, we actually teach the fundamentals. I taught my kids these skills when they were young. Why? I wanted my kids to have the ability to live this way should they choose. Now, I want to share a theory. Personally, I believe that theory is more than theory. I think it's more fact, but it's a very famous theory on love. And it's by Dr. Robert Sternberg. He used to be at Stanton University out in California. Stanford, excuse me. It's what's called the Sternberg's triangular theory of love. So if you can think about a triangle, on the very top of the triangle is the word intimacy only. On the left side, at the bottom, you can have the word passion only. And at the other side, at the bottom, you would have the word commitment only. Sternberg said that there are three components to love: intimacy, passion, and commitment. Now, let me read the definition of intimacy as espoused by Dr. Sternberg's work. Intimacy, which encompasses, it's the feelings that encompass the feelings of closeness, connection, and bondedness one experiences in loving relationships. In Relate Well, we call it us. Us wins, you both win. Us lose, you both lose. You can feel the us when you have it, and you can feel it when you don't. When us is in the house, you feel the love, you feel the tension. I mean, you feel the goodness, you feel the warmth. You can also feel the tension, the angst, all of that, right? And so love requires intimacy, a bond, a healthy attachment, feelings of closeness and connection. The second part of the second component, based on Sternberg's theory, and I believe he's right about this as well, is passion. Passion, the feelings of sexual desire, the feelings towards romance. He says here that passion encompasses the drive that lead to romance, physical attraction, and sexual consummation. And that to have healthy love, you got to have passion. And the third component, he says, is decision and commitment. Decision and commitment. And he says decision and commitment encompasses in the short term the decision that one loves another, and in the long term, the commitment to maintain that love. In other words, it means that even though we're going through something right now, I'm committed here, but I'm also committed till death do us part. Now, he does point out here that if you have intimacy, passion, and commitment, he calls that consummate love. Consummate love. This love is the most deepest kind because of the deep bond. There's a sexual, passionate drive for each other, and there's commitment. Consummate love. But he was brilliant. He also showed that there's variations of what we're going to call love. In other words, he points out that you could have intimacy, a sense of connection to someone, without passion and without commitment. So when all you have is intimacy only, he says that's just liking somebody. I like you. I have no desire for you sexually. There's no desire for romance with you. And personally, I'm not really committed to the relationship long term either. But I like you. Commitment only. You can have passion only, passion without intimacy and without commitment. His term for that is infatuation. You could use the words lust there. It's what's driving me towards you are sexual feelings, desire. We don't have much of a relationship. Don't know you probably. Not even committed. It's what attracts men and boys in high school, particularly to girls. You just see somebody and go, wow, she's pretty, right? Infatuation. That's passion without intimacy and without commitment. And then you can have commitment only. You can have commitment without a connection and without passion. And he calls that empty love. Empty love. I know some people who live that way. They're together, they're committed. The passion's gone. There is no real friendship there anymore, but they're in it because for whatever reason, I'm old and no one else is going to want me, or God hates divorce, or whatever their excuses are. It's called empty love. I'm not living that way for sure. Now, he did say there are also variations of those things. In other words, he says you could have passion and commitment. You can have passion and commitment without intimacy. Think about the top of the triangle there. You could have it without a friendship. He calls that fatuous love. I like to use the word vacuous love. It's love in a vacuum. In other words, what drives a commitment is the sexual feelings, and what keeps the commitment going is the sexual feelings, right? But there's really no friendship or real sense of connection to hold the relationship together as well. So that if the sexual feelings go, so goes the commitment. There's no real friendship there, intimacy to hold it together as well. He says you could also have intimacy and commitment without passion. His term for that is companionate love. Companionate love. This is, we're really good friends. We like each other. We're committed to each other. We just have no desire for sexual attraction, infatuation, no more romance. And he calls that companionate love. I actually worked with a couple many years ago who were in this category. They were the best of friends. They had 3 children, but they hadn't had sex with each other for almost 15 years of their 25-year marriage. And they knew there's something wrong with that, you see? So that's called companionate love. And then the last of these would be intimacy. We have a friendship. We like each other. And we're passionate towards each other. We sexually desire each other. I just don't want a commitment to the relationship. And his term for that is romantic love. Romantic love is intimacy and passion minus commitment. That, my friends, is what's driving the great numbers for cohabitation today. The fear of divorce, because the divorce generations have created a fear among millennials in particular. And millennials themselves don't value marriage. They're afraid of it. They value parenting, but not marriage. And so as a group, they don't marry, but they do live together. And it's growing more and more in the West, heavy in the United States now. We're catching up with Europe. You see, I like you. I just want that friendship. I want to have sex with you because I'm attracted to you. I just don't want commitment. Because if something didn't work out, then we don't have to divorce. And there is Sternberg's triangular theory of love. The idea that if you want what he calls consummate love, you've got to keep the liking going, the intimacy going. That's the connection, the friendship. You've got to keep the passion going with the romance. And you've got to have connection. And when those 3 things are constantly in the relationship, when the passion starts to wane a little bit, well, guess what? The friendship and the commitment keeps you in there. And but Time Law said, I don't like you. She didn't feel real close to me. And she didn't want to be really sexually with me back in those days, but she was committed. When those 3 things are constantly in the relationship, he calls it consummate love. Love in its highest form. I would rather live life that way. Now, it don't take humility to do that. It's going to take humility to live that way. But you've got to care enough about the person and what I call us, the idea of living for us. You've got to care enough to live that way to create it. We say in our world, it takes 2 to make an us and 1 to kill it. So just as a recap, Robert Sternberg's theory essentially that love has 3 components: intimacy, passion, and commitment. And when all 3 of those are present, he calls that consummate love. You'd have to ask my wife. From where I stand, I think I live in that, for the most part. I live in that, and I'm grateful for it too. Because love, there's so many songs about it. All you need is love. Love is a many splendored thing. There are so many songs about love. Sadly, we're not really living it out in Western culture. Because love requires humility. Love requires goodwill towards others. Love requires respecting others. And love requires empathy, caring about other people. Sadly, our culture is about hyper-individualism. In other words, it's going to be about me first, relationship second, third, or fourth. But yet love itself is about relationship. It values relationship and values others more than oneself. Why? Because here's the real secret to loving well. You're going to have to love yourself better. That's right. You want to love others better? Love yourself. Want to love your wife better? Love yourself. Want to love your husband better? Love yourself. Want to love your kids better? Love yourself. And I don't mean in an arrogant, haughty, prideful way. You see, humble people already have healthy self-love because they couldn't live a life of humility without it. Healthy self-love means, okay, I've got issues, and so what? I've got strengths too. I've got challenges, and I'm okay with that. And it's okay to not be okay. And when you get to a point that it's okay to not be okay, you will be okay. People who lack self-love are insecure. They can be angry. They're going to be wounded. And when you don't love yourself, that means there's a wound in you that's unhealed. Then you're going to wound others. You have to transform your pain so that you don't transfer it onto people. Did you get that? You have to transform your pain into healing so you don't transfer it onto other people. Love has compassion. Love has empathy. Love gives. It's an action. It's those traits. And I'll wrap up with this. I strongly believe that love is an emotion. I was taught, particularly by folks in the church, that love is not a feeling. Love is not a feeling. Love is an action. I disagree. If you ask me today, did my dad love me? Did my stepmother love me? I'd say, yeah. I assume they did. Ask me how I know. I don't. Never felt it. Never felt it. All I felt was the criticism, the judgment, the hurt, the pain. That's all I ever felt. Now, I'm sure they love me because, they gave me food, air, and water, shelter. But I also remind people the government does that for millions of children every single day. Anybody can do that. That's just about money. Love gives your heart away so you can feel the love. If you've been around me any much, you know I love this song by the Righteous Brothers. You've lost that loving feeling. Whoa, that loving feeling. You do lose the feelings of love. So if love is an emotion, and I believe it is, what keeps the emotions of love present? It's really simple. It's the idea, it's the logic of emotions. And the idea is pleasure and pain. If you are a source of pleasure, if you treat someone in a way that values them, that values them, that says you treat them in a way that creates pleasure. How to say it that way? If you treat someone on a regular basis in a way that you are a source of pleasure to them, because of how you treat them on a regular basis, that produces feelings of desire. And we feel love for the things that we desire that are pleasurable. And when you stop being a source of pleasure, people stop feeling love for you. It's simple. Now, if you treat me in a way, I treat you in a way that I'm a source of pleasure, then you feel love from me. Or you feel love for you. But you would also feel love from me. And if I stop being a source of pleasure, you won't feel love for me long term. Now, you can treat people in and I'll use the word in quotations here, loving way. I like to say this way, you can treat people with goodwill and respect, even though you have no feelings of love for them. The feelings of love are based on whether you are a source of pleasure. That has to do with how you treat me. When you stop being a source of pleasure, you are now a source of pain. A source of pain. And we don't feel love for people we feel threatened by. You actually feel danger. You feel danger from them. You feel insecure. You feel threatened by them. And when the brain feels threatened by someone because they're treating you in a way that they're a source of pain, the brain does three things. You either run from them because you're afraid, the flight response. You freeze and shut down emotionally, or you fight them. Fight, flight, freeze. You want people to feel love for you? then you become a source of pleasure. It's like my mentor said to me a long time ago when I first started working and hanging out with Lori Gordon. She said to me, you know, Rick, everything you do, moment by moment, you're a source of pleasure or you're a source of pain. There is no other option. If the bulk of the ways you treat Luella is painful, don't complain if she finds it difficult to feel love for you. If you treat her in a way that you're a source of pleasure, she's more likely to feel love for you. It's how you want to be as a way of being. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. And I've come to realize that things are really not that difficult. They're just simple. What makes it difficult is our pride, our prior history and relationships, our hurts, our wounds get in the way of making healthy, wise decisions in our relationships today, which is why we must come to a place we heal those wounds and learn to love ourselves. If you want to have compassion for others, you better develop self-compassion. Well, I hope in some small way this is giving you a little bit more insight into love, its traits, its 3 components based on Dr. Sternberg's theory, in just a simple discussion. It's an emotion. And the feelings of love are based on whether you're a source of pleasure or a source of pain. And you get to choose how you want to be towards others. This is Dr. Rick. Thank you for joining me for this Relate Well Live. Have a great evening, everyone. Well, hey, Kurt Williams, and hey to Jocelyn. I'm about to hang up here, but thank you for hanging out with us, by the way. I do appreciate it. And yes, I just saw what you wrote, Kurt, about my name being spelled wrong, so I'll fix that for the next one. Thanks, y'all. Have a great evening.